The scripture is the blueprint to life and living.
They are sure of their mission.
Our role is to redeem the entire world.
And the stakes are high.
Do you really wish that you could have been martyred?
Yes, martyrdom was my biggest wish.
What they have in common,
God promised we would return to this land.
Jews, Christians, and Muslims.
This is the ultimate sacrifice, to give your soul as a gift to God, the Creator, and the country.
The belief that modern society has lost its way.
They're raping virgin teenage America on the sidewalk, and everybody's walking by and acting like everything's okay.
The problem we have now with these civilizations is we don't offer the man where to go. He doesn't know his place in life.
The people that don't keep the Torah, they don't understand the meaning of being Jews, they wasting their life.
They say God is the answer.
I would like to see America become the nation under God again.
But their battle to save the world has caused anger, division, and fear.
I believe that Islam is a real threat.
Something's gone wrong. We've too closely fused politics and our faith.
I fear from those individuals who feel that they will go to heaven by killing me. I fear for my life.
Jerusalem, the ancient city filled with sacred meaning to three great religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. I'm Christiane Amanpour. Over the last 30 years, each faith has exploded into a powerful political force, with an army of followers who share a deep dissatisfaction with modern, secular society, and a fierce determination to bring God and religion back into daily life, back to the seat of power. We call them God's warriors. For 8 months, I traveled the world exploring who they are and what they want, and why this is a battle they say they cannot afford to lose.
God's Muslim warriors. They are much feared and little understood.
And leave us alone to establish the Islamic Shura state.
The face of the Muslim terrorist has become all too familiar.
What you have witnessed now is only the beginning.
But that mask is a symptom of something larger and more complex. A rage and distress about what's happening to the Muslim world. It has turned Islam into a political movement. To understand that movement, I traveled to meet a jihadist who plotted to bring down a president. A leader who says Islam is the road to democracy. A man who prays for martyrdom. A revolutionary who helped bring the United States to its knees. And a man who traveled the road to radicalism. June 29th, 2007, a disaster just barely averted. 2 car bombs set to explode on London streets that failed to detonate. The next day, another vehicle rammed into a Scottish airport, Glasgow. The alleged terrorists were Muslim doctors, men who have taken an oath to save lives. The scene was an eerie reminder of an attack 2 years earlier, when 52 people were killed, 700 were injured on London's bus and subway systems. It was Britain's 9/11.
Until you stop the bombing, gassing, imprisonment and torture of my people, we will not stop this fight. Now you too will taste the reality of this situation.
As shocking as the violence was the fact that the subway suicide bombers were homegrown terrorists raised in Britain. What would make these Muslim men turn against their own country? I talked to one man who may know the answer.
Ed, what makes a young teenager from a pious Muslim household become a radical?
In my case, I think initially I was duped.
It's a slow, gradual process, developing ideas that were confrontational, that were radical, that were extremist. Nobody questioned me other than my parents.
As a child, Ed Hussein's parents brought him to pray here at the moderate Brick Lane Mosque in London's East End. But at 16, call it a religious awakening or teenage rebellion, Ed ran away from home and through the gates of this hardline mosque.
And people at the mosque said to me that this was a choice between God and family.
Here, Ed found an ideology that put him on the road to radicalism.
I bought this book here, and it's prominently displayed there, attached to the mosque. Sayyid Qutb, for example, of this particular book, is the same man who is an inspiration to Bin Laden and Ayman al-Zawahiri and others. So these are the godfathers of Al-Qaeda. So it's being sold as a religious duty to kill innocent people on the basis of their religion.
In the grip of this ideology, Ed soon joined an even more radical group known as Hizb ut-Tahrir.
They're a group of individuals who have members right across the world who are dedicated to overthrowing every single Arab government, every single Muslim government, and setting up an expansionist global state in the Middle East. And in their words, it's a launch pad for a jihad to go out to other countries. So it's basically creating an Islamist empire.
And they operate here in England?
Absolutely.
Openly?
Openly, in large numbers, on university campuses to this day.
Hizb ut-Tahrir openly admits they are working for an Islamic empire. They call it the Caliphate, the Muslim world ruled by fundamentalist Islamic law, Sharia, just as it was 1,000 years ago. We went to question the group's spokesman.
Under Islamic rule, under the Caliphate, there was stability even in Palestine. Jews, Christians, Muslims lived in harmony under an Islamic political order.
What you say sounds, reasonable, but clearly your methods are suspect because you're banned in just about every country that exists, except for this one.
No, we're not at all.
In fact, the group is banned in most Middle Eastern and some European countries. But Mustafa says it's Muslim governments that are the problem, not his organization.
Let's be clear that it's the tyrants in the Muslim world who are afraid of the revival of the masses.
What's more, he denies Ed Hussein was ever a member.
That's false. I attended cell structure meetings for 2 years. My direct instructor wasn't anybody ordinary, it was a deputy leader of Hizb ut-Tahrir. I radicalized this entire college. In 2 years, there were Muslim women walking around in veils and face covers.
Even today, Hizb ut-Tahrir's ideology can be heard on campus.
I'm delighted that so many of you are here.
On this night, as part of an Oxford Union debate.
The US believes that its interest is of benefit to the world.
Jamal Harwood is the British leader of the organization.
Just like the Victorians learned that you cannot impose civilization with a machine gun, Americans should also understand you cannot impose democracy in Fallujah with an Abrams tank. Sharia law, which they would like to impose on you.
A former US Pentagon official responds.
Banning alcohol and sex and other ideas that I'm sure would go over very well in this university environment. The values of the West are under siege again by some of these forces of extremism.
But those values had little appeal for London's suicide bombers or for Ed Hussein when he was an Islamic radical.
The people who blew up the trains here on 7/7 were British.
We like to think they were British. But this is the problem, that when I was 16, when I was 17, when I was 18, yes, I was born here, yes, I was raised here, but I was not British.
But he does feel British now. What changed him was seeing a Muslim protest on campus turn violent.
The Christian student was stabbed in his heart and he fell here and he died. It made me realize that the organization I was part of that had given us those ideas that non-Muslims are expendable, that Muslims are superior, that we need to stick together against the other, this them and us mentality, ultimately led to this.
Ed says he left radical Islam there and then, but that it would take another 6 years and another atrocity to finally decontaminate his mind.
What was your reaction to 9/11?
I was in an odd way happy that America had been attacked. But I asked myself, where did that joy come from?
When did you realize that this was a wrong reaction?
That very evening on September the 11th. God speaks about the loss of one individual being the loss of the entire humanity. And there we were, as Islamists, abusing the Book of God.
And even more shocking for Ed was the reaction of his former colleagues when Britain was attacked.
I was speaking to my friends from Hizb ut-Tahrir about 7/7. So he said to me, so what did you make of 7/7? I said, well, you know, and before I could complete my sentence, he was saying, wasn't it great? Wasn't it great, was his response. It was chilling to hear that response from an organization that now claims to be, quote-unquote, non-violent.
As he walks away from that world, Ed Hussein says his duty now is to raise the alarm by writing this insider's account.
Why did you write this book?
Because all around me in Britain, I see a form of Islam that's being developed, which is highly literal, deeply political, and exceptionally confrontational.
We want to see the Sharia law in here in our country.
And in the West, we haven't quite grasped the dangerous mentality that these organizations have.
A mentality that's even spread to US citizens, like the man known as the American Taliban, John Walker Lind.
I wanted to help them one way or another.
Or like Adam Gadan, the American who now speaks for Al-Qaeda.
We shall continue to target you at home and abroad, just as you target us at home and abroad.
The United States recently released a chilling national intelligence estimate that cites a growing number of radical, self-generating cells in the West. Its troubling conclusion: a violent segment of the West Muslim population is expanding, including in the United States. America, the same place that decades ago inspired one man's radical brand of Islam.
This great America, what is it worth in the scale of human values? I wish I could find somebody to talk with about human affairs, morality and spirit. Not just dollars, movie stars and cars.
It is a moral indictment of America written in the 1950s. The author, a man who found the country to be a spiritual wasteland. His name was Sayyid Qutb. He inspired the likes of Osama Bin Laden and his lieutenant, Ayman al-Zawahiri. Qutb's works laid the foundation for the modern jihad movement.
Sayyid Qutb is the philosopher of the militant Islamist movement.
Fawaz Gerges is a professor and author who has interviewed hundreds of Islamic jihadists.
His views on America are terrifying. They are terrifying because they're narrow. He represented America in very simplistic dichotomies, and those simplistic dichotomies have influenced and shaped how radical Islamists and radical jihadists view America and Americans.
Qutb, an Egyptian Sunni Muslim, came to America in 1948 to study, but American culture shocked the scholarly Muslim poet and critic.
His 2 years in America turned Sayyid Qutb into a militant Islamist. He resented the deep philosophical secular roots of American society. He resented the way women and men interact in society. He resented the obsessive nature of American materialism. He believed that America lacked spiritualism.
I fear that a balance may not exist between America's material greatness and the quality of its people.
Qutb returned to Egypt and preached a message of restoring Muslim nations to their religious roots. The secular Egyptian government of Gamal Abdel Nasser imprisoned and tortured him, and finally, in 1966, executed him. His most radical book, Milestones, was written from prison. It advocated violent jihad, even against Muslim governments. His writings and what many saw as his martyrdom inspired generations of Muslim radicals.
He was my teacher, my instructor, my mentor.
Mahfouz Azam was also Qutb's friend.
He used to express in some of his letters about his feelings that the American society is losing its soul because of its materialism. He said, that's all they think about.
Azam is also the uncle of Ayman al-Zawahiri, the Egyptian doctor who would take Qutb's message to heart.
We are Muslims. We are Muslims who believed in their religion.
Zawahiri has become one of the most notorious terrorists of our time, second in command to Osama Bin Laden.
We want to speak to the whole world.
Zawahiri and Bin Laden were part of what became known in the Muslim world as the Sawa, the Awakening. A religious movement in the 1970s that pitted young, reform-minded Sunni Muslims against their established governments. If Sayyid Qutb provided the inspiration for these future jihadists, Afghanistan was their call to arms. In 1979, the Soviet Union, officially atheist and communist, invaded Afghanistan. It was an affront to Islam. Thousands of young Muslims signed up for jihad, a holy war against the invader. Osama bin Laden was one of them, and his exploits in Afghanistan gave him credibility as well as a base.
I have benefited greatly from the jihad in Afghanistan. It would have been impossible for me to benefit as much from any other opportunity.
The Soviets, worn down by the Mujahideen, the Muslim warriors, eventually withdrew from Afghanistan. Bin Laden would go on to establish Al-Qaeda. Zawahiri, the Egyptian doctor, would become his advisor. Both men inspired by the words of Sayyid Qutb. About the same time Sunni Muslim jihadists were taking on the Soviets, the Shiites, God's warriors in another Muslim country, were about to give America its first taste of Islamic fundamentalism. It's the holiest time of year for Shiite Muslims. On the streets of Tehran, grown men and women weep and pray. The city stopped dead in its tracks, from the main streets to the bazaars, as people across Iran relive the great religious dramas of their faith. I grew up in this country, and as a reporter, I come back, because it is here that 28 years ago, God's Muslim warriors rocked the world. This is where America first tasted Islamic fundamentalism, when Islamic revolutionary students stormed the embassy and took American diplomats hostage for 444 days. And this set off a wave of Islamic fundamentalism throughout the Muslim world. What were the Iranians reacting against?
The Iranians were reacting against decades of Western interference. You can see this as Iran's declaration of independence.
The ruler of Iran, the Shah, had been restored to power in the 1950s in a CIA coup. He was rushing to modernize his country, like his father before him.
The Shahs in Iran used to make their soldiers go out with their bayonets at the ready, ripping off the women's veils and tearing them to pieces in front of them in the streets.
Mohammad Reza Shah ruthlessly crushed dissent and exiled mullahs who challenged him. The most prominent, a firebrand cleric named Ayatollah Khomeini, blasted back, calling the Shah the enemy of Islam.
He brought the whole of Iran out onto the streets by pointing out the injustice of the rule.
With Iran's constitution in one hand and the Quran in the other, Khomeini offered up Islam as the antidote to corruption and Western dominance of Iran.
And I think many of the Iranians saw it as a purifying ritual. Khomeini and the revolutionary mullahs were able to speak to Shiite traditions, not to Marxism or secularist ideals that had no grassroots among the ordinary people.
With Khomeini's revolution came the world's first modern theocracy, a fundamentalist Islamic republic that stood up to the United States and humiliated a superpower.
We felt very strongly for the independence of our country. We felt very strongly for the dignity of the Iranian people. We felt very strongly about the intervention of the American government in our affairs.
Masumeh Ebtekar would eventually become Iran's first female vice president, pushing for more democracy. But back in 1979, she was the voice of the revolution.
These people are spies working in the United States Embassy.
We were not terrorists, we were not militia, we had no training, no military training. This was a student movement, a genuine student movement. But they knew that they had to take some sort of unconventional step.
Unprecedented in the history of global diplomacy.
Exactly.
That unprecedented act was the takeover of the American embassy in the heart of Tehran. The relationship between Iran and the United States has never recovered. Night after night during the Holy Week of Ashura, religious drama lights up the somber streets and neighborhoods of Iran. Shiite believers, God's warriors, raise the battle standards of their greatest hero, the martyr of all martyrs, Imam Hussein. Faith, they say, bears aloft this massive weight.
It's not our biceps, it's our beliefs that gives us our strength. That and our love for Imam Hussein.
To understand just how much they love Imam Hussein, who was the Prophet Muhammad's grandson, spend some time at these rituals. For Shiites, about 1/10 of all Muslims, his story represents the eternal battle against oppression and injustice, and the willingness to sacrifice even one's own life for that struggle. Which is what Imam Hussein did in 680 AD. In a fight over who would succeed the Prophet Muhammad, Hussein and his entire family were slaughtered in a heroic last stand that would lead to the bloody Shiite-Sunni rift that continues to this day. This passion play is performed by an amateur troupe of bakers and builders, and it's directed by a bus driver, Yahya Ali Mirzai.
When I see this play, my heart breaks and I cry, because Imam Hussein has answered so many of my prayers.
This is a very emotional play. What is the reaction from the crowd?
The people watching are also talking to God. As they shed their tears, they confide their troubles and ask for help in their lives.
The story may have happened 1400 years ago, but on Ashura, emotions resurface as raw as if it were just yesterday. I sat in the women's section of the audience, next to Nasreen.
I love Imam Hussein and I would love him to visit my home because I've seen the miracles he's performed. One day I was penniless and I didn't know what to do. But after praying to Imam Hussein, I found 50,000 riyals in my drawer. I have seen many such miracles.
Nasreen and the other women can watch, but they can't be on stage.
That's because Islam bars women speaking publicly when young men are present.
But in the story, there were women, his family were killed.
But back then, how shall I say, young men were purer. Now we have to cast men to play the roles of women.
For instance, this mustachioed maiden. The drama, though, is not diminished.
It's more than 1,000 years ago since this happened. Is it still relevant to Iran today?
For us, it's still important. Just like it was during the Iran-Iraq war, when young Iranians didn't hesitate to be martyrs.
Iran's 8-year war with Iraq is seen here as a triumph of faith. In 1980, Iraq's President Saddam Hussein invaded Iran. Hussein was supported by the Soviet Union and the United States. They saw him as a bulwark against the spread of Iranian-style Islamic revolution. The world assumed that Iraq's professional army would score a quick victory. But nobody reckoned with Ayatollah Khomeini's holy warriors. Waves of young boys who volunteered to become martyrs, clearing minefields by running across them. Nobody had ever seen anything like it. 8 blood-soaked years later, hundreds of thousands of young men and boys had been injured or killed, inspired to fight on by their first martyr, Imam Hussein. Back then, Amir Fakhr was one of Khomeini's holy warriors. Tonight, as he prepares free food for the Ashura crowds in Tehran, he tells us how he volunteered to fight when he was barely a teenager, seen here on a hilltop during the battle.
I was 13 when I went to the front.
You went to the war at 13 years old? How did they allow you to go at 13?
I did whatever I could. In the beginning, I was trained to defuse landmines, and when I was battle-hardened, I ran messages on foot.
Did you think of Imam Hussein when you were at the front?
He was my example. His courage inspired me. You can never praise him enough.
When the West looks at this and looks at the rituals, they see chest beating, they see back beating with chains. What message do you want the West to have about your religion, about your rituals?
When we beat ourselves with iron chains and damage our bodies, we want to show that we will stand with our Imam and our religion to the bitter end. For the Shiites, his sacrifice has kept Islam alive for 1400 years.
And it's alive today, not only in Amir's heart, but in his household. He's brought me to meet his family.
This is my son, Abbas, and this is Ali.
Amir's 2 little boys are named after his 2 brothers, who were killed in the war with Iraq, dying to defend their country. More than 20 years later, his mother doesn't regret the family's sacrifice.
Kubra, you're a mother, and you sent your 13-year-old son to the front. You lost already 2 sons. How could you have done that?
I never wept for my sons when they went to war. In fact, I was happy. I would have been angry if they refused to go.
Is religion that important in your life?
During the Ashura war, one of the Imam Hussein's disciples was decapitated, and his head was thrown at his mother. But she flung it back defiantly, saying, "Whatever I give to God, I don't want back." That's how important Islam is for us.
From the holy city of Rome, a grand Ayatollah tells us that martyrdom for your faith should never be confused with suicide terrorism.
The Western world, when they think of Muslims, they think of terrorists. So what is your answer to those people who say that they are God's warriors, that they're God's soldiers, that they kill in the name of God.
I've always said that terrorists should go to hell, and that is our belief. But if the enemy attacks us, we have the right to defend ourselves in any possible way.
Here we are.
Which is what Dawood Abdul Hadi did. Like his friend Amir, he was also a teen defending his country.
Do you really wish that you could have been martyred?
Yes, martyrdom was my biggest wish, but for me, it just wasn't meant to be.
Everybody understands that if your country is attacked, you'll defend it. But what I think many people don't understand is this love of martyrdom that exists in Islam, and particularly in Shiism. Why is it so important to die?
We love martyrdom because it leads us to heaven and because we'll be helped on the day of judgment.
Are you ready to fight again if you have to?
The true believers are still here. We don't ask for war. But if the enemy attacks even an inch of our territory, all Iranians, from children to old men, are ready to fight.
Tonight, Dawood sings in honor of Imam Hussein's martyrdom.
When we beat our chests, we feel light. We share the sufferings of Imam Hussein, and we tell the world that he is our master.
With Iranians ready to fight and die if they have to defend their Islamic State, in Egypt, a president was assassinated to bring that country closer to Islam. It seems senseless and shocking. Anwar Sadat, the first Arab leader to recognize Israel and offer peace in the Middle East, cut down by assassins' bullets.
They were a group of Islamic jihadis, and I was one of them.
To Kamal al-Said Habib, it was part of a moral and spiritual mission. For more than 2 decades, he was a key figure in the radical Islamic movement. I traveled to Cairo, a crowded, bustling city of 18 million, to meet him.
I knew that Sadat would be killed a few days before he was killed.
Although he wasn't one of the shooters, Kamal was part of a paramilitary group that plotted to bring down the Egyptian government and replace it with an Islamic state.
What did he represent to them? Why did he get assassinated by them?
He adopted Western modernization and established a relationship with Israel. And to us, that was like an earthquake.
After the assassination, Kamal was imprisoned for 10 years. These photos were taken just after his release. In prison, he became an influential leader among fellow jihadists. In a prison essay, he wrote that the struggle between Islam and Christianity will not end unless one opponent defeats or annihilates the other. Like many in his generation, he was inspired by Sayyid Qutb, an earlier inmate in Egypt's prisons who redefined the word jihad. Kamal, like other fundamentalists I met, echoes Qutb's criticism of America.
America and the Western world have a moral problem. They look at the human being only from a materialistic point of view.
Qutb wrote that Islamic values are the cure for spiritual emptiness. He urged Muslims to purge the world of Western influence, if necessary, by force. Fawaz Gerges describes one of Qutb's books, Milestones, as the manifesto of the jihadi movement.
And Milestone says, listen, your mission in life is to replace the secular non-Muslim society, government that exists in this part of the world with authentic Islamic state. And you must do it. You must do it using all means at your disposal.
Qutb's writings were a call to arms for Kamal al-Habib. To this day, he believes Egypt should be an Islamic state.
Do you believe Sharia should be the law today, here in Egypt?
No.
Yes, but not a theocratic state as in the Dark Ages. We want a civil state with an Islamic foundation.
His Islamic state would have democratic elections. But Kamal rejects other Western values. For example, the Western view of women's rights, which he sees as an American encroachment on Muslim culture.
Islamic law allows that the woman can be a judge when it comes to women's issues. When it comes to her being a president to all the Muslims, Islamic law doesn't go to that extent. And I agree with that, because of the nature of the role that the woman is supposed to perform in life.
You will angry from me.
I'm very angry from you.
This is not discrimination.
To me, it's discrimination.
Again, this is not discrimination against her, but it is an appreciation for the basic role that God, to whom be ascribed all perfection and majesty, created for that purpose.
Today, Kamal works to bring about reform peacefully through the political process.
Not the violence.
Not violence.
Yes, not violence.
After years in prison, he now says violent jihad didn't bring the rewards he had hoped for. Kamal condemns the carnage of 9/11. He has said, "The jihadist is not a beast. We have no cult of death. We love life. We love our families, but we want to live with dignity." Despite his own journey from jihad to peace, Kamal views the US invasion of Iraq as another attack on Islam by the West. And he is concerned about young Muslims.
I worry that Islamic youth will react violently.
What's happening in Iraq has really poured fuel on a raging fire. I think we're going to witness a new generation, which is much more dangerous of Al-Qaeda, bloodier than Al-Qaeda, that uses terrorism as a rule rather than as an exception.
Terror in the name of God, the hallmark of the world's most wanted man.
May God give victory to the young men who perform jihad to win His approval.
He believes he's doing something good, and he believes he's right.
Bin Laden believes that he's doing God's will, and that if he doesn't do what he's doing, that God will punish him.
The most infamous of God's warriors, Osama Bin Laden, wages a religious war against the West.
We are giving the good news that we will gain victory over America and the Jews, God willing.
He is the world's most wanted terrorist. To most, Muslims included, a mass murderer. But to his true believers, like the widow of an Al-Qaeda suicide bomber, Bin Laden is a great Muslim leader, a pious man defending Islam against infidels.
Most Muslims love him, just like I love him myself. It was Osama Bin Laden who stood up against the biggest enemy in the world, the United States.
From the beginning, it was religion that set him apart. It is at the core of who Bin Laden is and how he thinks.
I wouldn't go to Mecca every week, for example. He would.
Khalid Batafi grew up with Osama bin Laden in this Jeddah neighborhood in Saudi Arabia. Batafi says bin Laden liked to play a game where he tested his friends on their knowledge of Islam.
And then he would ask questions. When was the Prophet was born, for example? And we raise hands if we know, and then, oh, you are great.
Over time, Batafi saw his friend become more and more devout, striving to live according to his ultra-strict interpretation of the Holy Quran.
No pictures, no music. And after that, not even TV, unless there's news.
Bin Laden's religious devotion went beyond living a simple, pious life. He spent time in the Saudi desert, exposed to harsh conditions, believing it was his duty to prepare to fight and defend Islam. The opportunity came in the 1980s in Afghanistan. For most jihadis of bin Laden's generation, the first holy war. He organized his own all-Arab army to battle the Soviets occupying the Muslim country.
Young Arabs he was recruiting were willing to martyr themselves, willing to take incredible personal risk, willing basically to take one-way tickets to Afghanistan to go and fight the Soviets.
His army would eventually become known as Al-Qaeda, and bin Laden would himself fall under the influence of the radical Egyptian doctor Ayman al-Zawahiri, number 2 in Al-Qaeda.
Again and again, bin Laden is influenced by Egyptian ideas, Egyptian political organizations, and Egyptian people, and they tend to move him in a more radical and militant direction over time.
Zawahiri helped hone bin Laden's focus on toppling secular governments in the Middle East to create a vast Islamic nation without borders, a caliphate.
He wants to go back in history to the golden age of Islam, the pure Islam.
Over the years, Zawahiri pushed bin Laden to a deadly new strategy to weaken Muslim heads of state, what jihadis call the near enemy, by attacking their supporters in the West, the far enemy. In 1990, the US became his main target, after the Saudi government allowed hundreds of thousands of US troops to use the kingdom as a base. It was to repel Saddam Hussein during the First Gulf War. But bin Laden saw them as infidels on holy Muslim soil. Sacrilege, according to his views. Prince Turki Al Faisal is the former head of Saudi Arabia's intelligence service. Bin Laden, he told me, called for lethal attacks to drive out US forces.
A car bomb exploded in front of a National Guard training center in Riyadh, and the perpetrators were captured, and they said that they had been inspired by bin Laden.
Whether it's Saudi Arabia, Iraq, or any Muslim country, bin Laden sees the US presence as an attack on Islam.
He wants America to go back to its big island and stay there and take their hands out of our affairs.
In this extraordinary 1998 press conference, bin Laden declared war against the United States.
The Jews and the Christians work together against Muslims.
A jihad that he and his followers have been waging ever since. Bombing 2 US embassies in Africa simultaneously. 2 years later, attacking the USS Cole, a Navy destroyer in a Yemeni port. And finally, the devastating attacks inside the United States that changed the world.
We calculated in advance the number of enemy casualties. I was the most optimistic of them all.
Bin Laden doesn't just kill Americans. Al-Qaeda attacks in Asia, Africa, and elsewhere also have left fellow Muslims dead, and now Al-Qaeda also targets Muslims, those they call infidels, in places like Iraq. It's their battle to control Islam itself. In the years since 9/11, Bin Laden has been in hiding. The US has been unable to find him despite offering tens of millions of dollars in bounty. But his presence is still felt, his theology of violence still preached in his lieutenant's taped declarations.
You are not facing individuals or organizations, but in reality you are facing the Islamic nation whose soul is now inhabited by the spirit of jihad.
It is a twisted message of religion and politics, a call to terror that for some continues to resonate.
When you hear his voice, it makes you want to stand up right away and leave and join him.
Next, Egypt, the birthplace of political Islam. Will politics and democracy turn it into the next Islamic state?
Egypt is the beating heart of the Arab world. It's the center of Arab and Muslim culture and civilization.
The birthplace of political Islam.
Anything that happens in Egypt basically migrates to various Arab and Muslim countries.
Egyptians have endured colonialism, authoritarian regimes, and now they live in a virtual police state. Religion has become their haven, and Islam their politics.
People are terrified, people are exhausted, people are oppressed, and the only way for them to find a refuge is to go back to reclaim their religion.
Reclaiming a central role for religion in a new democratic Egypt is the mission of the Muslim Brotherhood. It's now Egypt's most powerful opposition group. Headquartered on this quiet Cairo street in a nondescript apartment house, I dropped in for a visit.
From CNN? Can we come in? Good to see you again.
I was met by its supreme guide or leader, Mohammed Akef.
Now, it's quite a small office, isn't it?
But we can't control over the world.
We can control the world from here, is what he said.
Numbers have grown for the Muslim Brotherhood as Egyptians have turned to religion as the antidote to the secular government. The Brotherhood campaigned under the slogan, "Islam is the solution." Despite being banned by the government, its candidates ran as independents in the last elections in 2005, and they won nearly 20% of the seats in parliament.
We are the true owners of this stage. The stage is ours. The majority of the people support us. They are with righteous Islam.
But the Brotherhood has a notorious past. Members assassinated a prime minister in 1948, and 6 years later attempted to kill the Egyptian president Gamal Abdel Nasser in their drive to rid Egypt of its secular government. Osama Bin Laden was influenced by the Brotherhood, and his second-in-command, Zawahiri, was a member. But the group has now officially renounced violence, and today's Supreme Guide claims it was never condoned.
It wasn't a part of the Muslim Brotherhood as a group, but they were individuals. Individuals who took certain actions that they are solely responsible for.
The growth of the Muslim Brotherhood's political base has caused fear that Egypt, a strong US ally, could become another Islamic state.
Is the Muslim Brotherhood potentially as scary as what happened in Iran?
No, I don't believe so. The Muslim Brotherhood is a mainstream, moderate, Islamist political party that subscribes to the rules of the political game.
There are signs everywhere here that more people are openly identifying with Islam. When I walked through Cairo, I found myself in the minority because most women now wear at least a veil, even as they shop for fashionable clothes, shoes, and lingerie.
So walk through the door to the open mouth.
Gayad Khalik does not fit the stereotype, playing guitar and singing Western songs with her father. But even she would never consider removing her veil in public.
I chose to keep it on because I do believe in modesty and you shouldn't be showing off.
Gayad Khalik is the daughter of a prosperous, well-educated Muslim Brotherhood family. Her grandfather, Farid Khalik, has been a member for more than 60 years. He spent 12 of those years in prison, where he says he was tortured. Her father, Osama, is a businessman and founded an airline. To him, a secular state is one without moral purpose.
The problem we have now with these civilizations is we don't offer the man where to go. He doesn't know his place in life, what he should do with his life.
Is there an independent judiciary?
People fought for that.
Yes.
They didn't get it yet.
Osama and his wife invited me to dinner.
Can I serve you?
At their house in a Cairo suburb.
What does religion mean in your daily life and your political life?
Of course, it's a great influence.
We spent much of the evening discussing religion and politics. Osama knows that many people fear a religious state.
And when the Muslims said our Islam is everything, it is politics, it is life, it is everything, people get afraid.
But he and his father Farid believe that an Islamic government can be democratic.
We accept a democracy because it's really the best system.
And would these be free elections forever or free elections one time?
La, ever.
But many are worried about the true intentions of the Muslim Brotherhood leaders, whether they'll impose Sharia, strict Islamic law.
I mean, many people are worried about it. Women are worried about the application of the Sharia. Minorities are worried about the Sharia. Secular intellectuals are worried about the Sharia.
Allahu Akbar.
To allay such fears, the Supreme Guide of the Brotherhood told me the bar is very high for when Sharia will be implemented.
Only when all the people have what they need, their own house, transportation, food, and this and that, only then, whoever steals will have his hand cut off. Whoever commits adultery will be stoned.
So are you basically saying the conditions do not exist today for the implementation of strict Sharia law?
No, that's right. The conditions do not exist now.
Whatever Egyptians may feel about living under Sharia, there is no doubt the Brotherhood has touched a chord with its Islamic message. Observers here say that if Egypt held free and open elections, the Brotherhood would win, hands down. While these Egyptians may be waiting for a state based on religious law, Iranians already have one, and they have a president who is waiting for the return of the Shiite Messiah. Once again, the drumbeat of discord is rising between a resurgent Iran and a worried West.
The Iranian regime sponsors terrorists and has advocated the destruction of our ally Israel.
Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, Iran's president, openly defies worldwide pressure to suspend his country's nuclear program, and he alarms the West with his frequent diatribes against Israel and the United States.
The leaders of America want to resolve issues worldwide using force, arms, and bombs.
And when he first addressed the United Nations, Iran's fundamentalist president seemed to see himself as a man on a divine mission.
Almighty Lord, I pray to you to hasten the emergence of your last repository, the promised one.
Upon his return to Iran, he told an Ayatollah in the holy city of Rome that he had mesmerized his audience.
One of our people said that when I praised God the Almighty, He saw a light around me, and I was placed inside an aura till the end of my speech. And for 27 minutes, the leaders of the world didn't blink. I'm not exaggerating, because I was looking at them, and they were transfixed, as if a hand was holding them.
Ahmadinejad now disavows that tape and claims it's a media concoction. But he has reportedly made his entire cabinet take an oath of allegiance to the Hidden Imam, a 9th century Shiite cleric who's a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. He is meant to come back one day as a Shia messiah. President Ahmadinejad repeatedly says that his government must hasten that day. To find out more about the mysterious Hidden Imam, I traveled to the holy city of Rome, Iran's center of religious power.
Before going in to interview some of these conservative clerics, I'd been warned to make sure that I wore the strictly traditional head scarf, head covering. So I'm now going to remove the one I traditionally have to wear here, and I'm going to, out here in the car, quickly put this very tight fitting covering over my head. I can't do it.
So I went to this Islamic dress shop for some professional advice.
So this lady is helping me because it's actually rather difficult to organize. There's an elastic band around the back of my head, holding all this in place. Can you believe these women have to do this every day?
By the time I was deemed sufficiently covered, the head of the Bright Future Institute studying the Hidden Imam wouldn't look at me anyway, nor would he shake my hand, because I'm a woman.
My name's Christiane Amanpour from CNN, and we've come to find out about the Bright Future and how you see it.
You are welcome here, and we are at your disposal.
I discovered that the Hidden Imam mysteriously disappeared centuries ago, and that God has kept him alive since then, so that he can return one day and usher in a new era of peace and Islamic justice. This center is waiting to welcome him, and it's abuzz with activity. Clerics pore over religious texts, and people even call in to ask exactly when the Hidden Imam is coming back.
The phone's ringing.
Right now, clerics tell me, the Imam is hiding like the sun on a cloudy day. That's the message they're sending even to children all over the world.
I want to go to a faraway land, and I want us to go on the journey together, to ride on the clouds and go to the land of dreams, the land of wishes, to the end of the world.
What are the conditions? What has there to be in the world for the Hidden Imam to come?
All the world's ideologies will falter. Communism came and went, and liberal democracy will also fail. And when nobody can provide a solution, that's when the Hidden Imam will appear, saying, I'm the answer, and he'll save the world.
If Christians and Jews don't follow the Hidden Imam, clerics say there will be trouble.
If Judaism and Christianity don't recognize him, conflicts are possible. So God will send Jesus to mediate.
And he says Jesus will tell the whole world to follow the Hidden Imam. But until that day, thousands of pilgrims come here to Jamkaran, the shrine of the Hidden Imam. They drop their petitions into the well of requests. And it was none other than President Ahmadinejad who ordered the shrine to be refurbished. He believes the day of judgment is near, and that sustains him as he confronts the West. When we return, meet the women of Iran. How do they fit into the fundamentalist dream? Far from Iran's capital, in rural Zanjan, Rafat Bayat is doing what politicians do, meeting her constituents.
How many women MPs are there?
Bayat is one of 13 women in the Majlis, the parliament of Iran's Islamic Republic.
13 out of 209.
But she is a fundamentalist with unusual credentials.
I understand that you studied in the United States.
Yes.
Where did you study?
Texas.
Texas?
Yes.
Were you veiled when you were in America?
Yes. You have a problem with me now?
Well, you know, I might not have a problem with you, but Americans certainly, when they see a woman dressed completely like this, they say, well, clearly women don't have rights. What rights do women have under the Islamic Republic of Iran?
Every right a woman needs to lead a good life. In her job, her home life, her education. In fact, 65% of our university students are women.
You say that under the Islamic Republic, women have all the rights they want. And yet, in court, a girl who is accused of adultery, whether she's been raped or whatever, can get stoned to death.
You always pick on isolated cases and blow them out of proportion. We probably have less rapes of minors here than anywhere in the world. But stoning for adultery is part of Islamic law.
I can't imagine any religion that would say it's all right to stone a young girl to death, no matter what she's done.
We've only had 3 to 4 cases of stoning in the past 28 years.
Do you not think it's violent to stone a woman to death?
If Islamic law mandates a specific punishment to stamp out a specific vice, I will defend it, even if the whole world is against it. Understand?
But recently, Iran's highest court exonerated religious vigilantes who had killed 5 people in the name of moral purity, including one couple just for walking together in public.
It's important to say that none of the great world religions has been good for women. Not a single one of them.
Religious historian Karen Armstrong says that Islam's prophet Muhammad was actually ahead of his time when it came to women.
The Quran gives women rights of inheritance and divorce that Western women would not receive until the 19th century. And there is nothing in the Quran about all women having to be veiled or secluded in a certain part of the house. That came in later.
In 2003, lawyer Shireen Ebadi won a Nobel Peace Prize for fighting to restore the rights of Iranian women. She had been Iran's first female judge, but when the Ayatollahs came to power, they tossed her off the bench.
I have been a judge and a lawyer for 35 years. I teach law at university and I won the Nobel Peace Prize. But the court here will not admit my testimony unless it's backed by another woman. But the man who cleans my office can testify on his own, even though he's illiterate.
That's because here in Islamic courts, a woman's testimony and even her life are worth exactly half that of a man's.
Is there a pushback of the limited rights that women have?
Yes, of course. 65% of our university students are girls. But now officials want to reduce that to 50%. It's a regressive step.
In a fundamentalist society, can there be women's rights?
Women and men can enjoy equal rights, only with a modern interpretation of Islam. Fundamentalism promotes a male-dominated culture.
And this is the product of that culture. the numbing reality of a woman's everyday life, according to Iranian photographer Shadi Qadirian.
What are you trying to say with this? What's the message? To me, it looks like women have a boring life. All they do is make tea, iron clothes, brush the floor, and cook.
It's somehow an objection that's to the women that always they repeat these things every day and they don't think about it. They are like a machine.
They're like machines.
Shadi Qadirian has grown up in Iran. She knows the intricate art of self-censorship.
How do you censor yourself?
For example, my women in my photos should have veil in my photos. Like our cinema, if you notice, women when they want to go to bed, they have also veil, you know? Because we know that if we want to show our photos, we should do these things.
Because if they don't, government censors will do it for them.
This is how it appears in the books at university. Classic pictures of art that are censored.
And imagine we studied art.
Is the biggest problem for women like you the veil?
No, I have many, many more serious problems. I think it's for our Islamic laws.
So the laws are the big problem?
Yeah.
Something even conservative parliamentarian Rafat Bayat discovered when she tried to run for Iran's highest political office.
Mrs. Bayat, you put your name forward to be a candidate for president. What was the answer?
I was told that I didn't have enough executive experience. But there was another thorny issue, the ambiguous wording in our constitution that currently says only important men of politics can become president.
The clerics blocked her candidacy, but she wants to change the law.
Can Iran have a woman president?
I hope.
Women keep pushing the boundaries here, but now President Ahmadinejad's enforcers are trying to stop them. In a new Tehran-style spring cleaning, thousands of women have been detained for dressing un-Islamically. Like this woman screaming as she's pushed into a police car, according to the bystander who captured it on his cell phone. Many women in Iran are refusing to go quietly.
If they try to turn the clock back, they will set off an explosion.
Next, why a Muslim woman in America takes the veil.
It's a requirement by God. He wants us to cover.
She's a lifelong American.
When I was growing up, we mowed the lawn, we shoveled the driveway when it was snowing.
Born and raised in Islip, Long Island.
I was very involved in sports.
But Rehan Siam is a jihadist, just not the sort you're thinking of.
The word jihad means struggle. I treat me wearing hijab in the United States as a struggle. Jihad itself, struggle. That's my jihad. I mean, holy war, really? Who made that up? That's really a very bad translation. It's a self-struggle. Living in a secular society where you have to work to maintain your Islamic values, that's jihad.
Rehan Siam's parents came here from Egypt. They were devout. But like so many immigrant children, she was a typically Americanized teenager.
So when I'd be called to pray by my parents, I would just run between commercial breaks and wash up and pray and run back, and hopefully I didn't miss my TV show.
But as she grew up and went to college, in what was now a post-9/11 world, she began to get closer to Islam. And one morning, she made a decision that would change her life: to wear the hijab, the traditional Muslim headscarf.
It was very dramatic for me. And I remember how, like, even now thinking about it, it really does make my heart beat a little bit faster because I was making a decision I knew was permanent. You put on hijab, you don't take it off. So I said, that's it.
Rihan's jihad isn't violent, not even close, but it is public. It is a deliberate display of faith. Not just covering her head, but swearing off alcohol, praying 5 times a day, which isn't easy in a typically busy American life.
Sometimes it's uncomfortable if you're in the mall. What do? Where are you going to go? Pray in your car?
Rihan is part of a new generation among America's approximately 2 million Muslims.
Young Muslims here are becoming much more religious than their parents. And this is being expressed by more women wearing headscarves, the increase in mosque attendance, more mosques being built, more Muslims wanting to attend Islamic schools rather than the public school system.
Genevieve Abdo is the author of Mecca and Main Street. She says that since 9/11, the majority of American Muslims feel they're singled out for suspicion and surveillance by the government and by ordinary people.
They will look at me as if I'm threatening, and I don't feel like I'm very threatening looking. I don't feel like I should instill fear in anybody's hearts, but I do feel like I get dirty looks. It's because they see me as a Muslim.
A recent Pew Forum poll offered the first look at attitudes of Muslims living in America. The majority, it found, are highly assimilated, moderate, and see no conflict between being a devout Muslim and living in the United States. But there was a distinct difference between young Muslims and their parents. Young Muslims were almost twice as likely to attend mosque as their parents, and considerably more likely than their parents to say they are Muslims first, Americans second. And while most American Muslims reject extremism, younger Muslims, 26% of them, say suicide bombings can sometimes be justified. Author Genevieve Abdo found young Muslims often feel a disconnect with the American lifestyle.
They're rejecting a lot of things about American culture. They don't want to date. They don't want to drink alcohol. They don't want to engage in premarital sex. They consider many aspects of American society immoral.
Assalamu alaikum. Alaikum assalam.
For Rihan and her husband Rami,
Good. Thanks.
and most practicing Muslims, Islam is their identity. It shapes every aspect of who they are.
Islam is a way of life. Ask anyone who practices. They will tell you it's not just your religion. A lot of people go to the church on Sunday and that's their religion for their week. Mine is every single day, every minute of my day.
Islam even shaped their courtship. Rami asked Rihan's parents for permission before he asked her out.
I like that. I was like, he's religious. Like I could tell he wasn't going to try to meet me without any sort of like parental notification.
If you read about Islam, many of the things that we do are actually to protect the woman. You know, going to her parents and doing things in a proper way, you know, you're not hiding anything.
Rihan insists that covering up is not a sign of a woman's inferiority, as many Westerners believe, but a sign that Muslim women refuse to be degraded, as she feels they can be in American culture.
I don't want any guy looking at me except for my husband, provocatively. Why would I want that? Why do I want to be a piece of meat?
A feeling echoed by religious historian Karen Armstrong, who herself used to wear a habit as a former Roman Catholic nun.
In some ways, it was very liberating. For 7 whole years, I never had once to think about my hairstyle, my makeup, my clothes. I never had to wear man-pleasing garments. I never had to fill my head with the junk that society tells women to trivialize their lives about.
I think Western belief is that the more you have, the more prestigious you are, and you compete with other people as to what you have. Who has a better car? Who has a bigger house? Who has the nicer purse? In Islam, it's actually the total opposite. You're supposed to be humble.
So Rihan Sayam is committed to her struggle to live a religious life in a material world. It's her jihad.
I want to be praying to God. I'm lucky that I wake up every morning, I could think of God. I don't think that everybody has that, and I think that I'm lucky for it.
I began to pray for the Mujahideen, for these stateless holy warriors who were trying to topple secular governments throughout the world.
Those are the words you might expect to hear in the Middle East or even in Europe, but it might surprise you that this man became a radical Muslim in Ashland, Oregon.
Ashland's an adorable countercultural town with very liberal, progressive, and tolerant ideals.
David Gartenstein Ross was born Jewish to parents who call themselves mystics. His transformation into a radical Muslim raises disturbing questions about how extremism can flower in America. It's happened before to Americans like John Walker Lind.
How long have you been in Afghanistan?
About 6 months.
Who became a fighter for the Taliban, or Adam Gadan, who became a spokesman for Al-Qaeda.
And warned the unbelievers of defeat and humiliation.
David's journey began in college. He was looking for his own spiritual identity when he encountered Islam.
The form of worship was something that drew me towards it. Islam was a very simple faith, and as I learned more about it, it seemed more and more fascinating to me.
In the fall of 1997, David called home and told his parents he was planning to become a Muslim.
We felt it was okay. We were glad that he was going to study something, and hopefully seriously, and we were happy with Islam.
Home for a visit, David met local Muslims here at this makeshift mosque in Ashland.
And it was then that I saw my first radical sermon. His argument was that the West was so inherently corrupt, so inherently anti-Islamic, that if we stayed in this society, that inevitably our faith would be eroded.
The mosque would soon trade in its humble home for a hilltop headquarters.
The house off to the right, that's the house where we used to have prayers. It was clear to me that the group had more money than ever before.
Money from a Saudi Arabian charity, the Al Haramain Foundation. A man named Pete Seda, who ran the charity's local office, offered David a job.
As they say, it seemed like a good idea at the time. It seemed like an opportunity to learn more about my new faith, an opportunity to help advance Islam.
Seda became David's mentor. Within a few months, David found himself agreeing with extreme views.
Ideas that I'd once thought unthinkable, like the idea that the state should enforce the modesty of women, the idea that the state should ban homosexuality. All these seemed like, much more reasonable ideas, and indeed seemed like good ideas to me.
At Al Haramain, David saw the religion which he had embraced for its tolerance become obsessed with rules and ideology.
I wasn't to shake hands with women. I wasn't to pet a dog. I wasn't to wear shorts that came up above my knees. But conversely, my pants legs couldn't be too long.
David says whenever he questioned the rules, his Muslim co-workers would tell him his own views were irrelevant.
Your moral inclinations do not matter. All that matters is whether this is what's right according to God's will, because if God exists, then ultimately He is the only arbiter of right and wrong.
David eventually quit his job at Al Haramain to attend law school. Away from his co-workers, he began to question the radical doctrines they had all embraced.
My moral impulses did rebel against, the idea that jihad was an obligation that should be undertaken against non-Muslim societies. That didn't seem right to me. It didn't seem right to me that people who left the faith should be killed, which is something that was taught at Al Haramain.
In 2004, federal agents raided the Ashland offices of Al Haramain. The United States would designate the organization as a sponsor of terrorism for funding rebels in Chechnya. David's mentor, Pete Sader, would be indicted for financial crimes and would flee the United States. And David would provide information to the FBI.
I knew about some of Al Haramain's contempt for U.S. tax law. I knew about the support these guys had for the Mujahideen in Chechnya.
Just last week, Pete Sader voluntarily returned to the United States to fight the government's charges. He pleaded not guilty. And earlier this month, lawyers for the now defunct Al Haramain organization sued the government in an attempt to remove its name from a list of terrorist organizations, saying its work had, quote, nothing to do with terrorist or violent activities. On the whole, most Muslims in America are well assimilated. They make as much money and are just as well educated as the average American. But David, now a counterterrorism consultant, believes his process of radicalization, while not violent, might have eventually led to something much more sinister. And he wrote a book, My Year Inside Radical Islam, to try to explain the grip religious extremism had on him.
There's a number of instances of people who've gone through processes of radicalization who have ended up, going operational. Famously, John Walker Lind and Adam Gadon. Both of these men went through some similar steps to my own.
And in the Netherlands, a radical Muslim acted on his beliefs, stunning his country by killing one of its most famous men. Amsterdam, November 2004. Scene of a grisly and shocking murder. The victim, the great-grandnephew of artist Vincent van Gogh. The killer, Mohammed Bouyeri, a homegrown radical Muslim. Bouyeri gunned down Theo van Gogh as he rode his bicycle, and then he cut his throat, nearly decapitating him.
And this whole killing of Van Gogh in Bouyeri's ill mind was a sort of holy killing, a sort of sacrifice, like killing an animal.
A holy killing? In the Netherlands? A country known for its windmills, its canals, and its tolerance. A new battlefront between God's Muslim warriors and the West. Bouyeri was part of a Dutch terrorist cell called the Hofstad Group. Another member had plans to blow up government buildings and kill politicians in parliament in a suicide bombing.
Just as you have spilled the blood of Muslim citizens in Iraq, we will spill your blood here.
Many of the group's members were sent to prison. I traveled to the Netherlands to find that this country's once tiny Muslim community has swelled to more than 1 million in a country of 16 million. Across Europe, Islam is the fastest growing religion, the number of Muslims tripling in the last 30 years. This increased Muslim presence and violence, like the Van Gogh murder, play into the hands of right-wing politicians like Geert Wilders, a member of the Dutch parliament.
Yes, here we have 9 seats.
Who fears the Dutch are losing their country to an alien culture. The party he's founded has staked its political future in large part on an anti-Islam platform. He's proposed shutting down immigration from non-Western countries and banning burqas and niqabs, the head-to-toe coverings worn by some Muslim women, even though very few here wear them.
Why have you chosen Islam as your battleground, so to speak?
Islam is, I believe, one of the most major threats to the West and also to Western Europe and to the Netherlands today, and more especially the radical Islam, is a major threat to our society. Those are people that hate everything and that we stand for and are proud to use every means possible to kill us.
Do you fear for your life?
I fear from those individuals who feel that they will go to heaven by killing me. I fear for my life.
Ayaan Hirsi Ali has reason to fear. A former member of the Dutch parliament, her name was on a death threat stabbed to Theo van Gogh's chest. Her crime? She had collaborated with Van Gogh to make this provocative film called Submission. It is an indictment of the way some Muslims mistreat women. Hirsi Ali was born in Somalia and raised in a devout Muslim family. She rebelled when her father chose a man for her to marry.
You bolted?
I bolted, yes. I went to Holland and started to lead a different life. I removed my headscarf, I started to wear trousers, I started to ride on bicycles, and I made friends of the infidels, the Dutch.
She became a Dutch citizen, then an atheist and an outspoken critic of Islam. In 2003, she was elected to Parliament. She says that even in Europe, religious tradition dominates many immigrant Muslim households, and women are subjugated by family members, suffering abuse and even death.
Fathers who, when girls choose to go finish school or find their own boyfriends, beat them or kill them.
That's happening today?
In Holland, in Germany, in France, in the UK. They will say it's because of my religion, and you need to respect my religion.
The Netherlands is perhaps the epitome of a liberal, secular society where prostitution is legal and quite visible, and where you can smoke marijuana in a cafe. As in much of Western Europe, religious worship has dramatically declined, except among Muslims.
The devil is always present, even when you eat, even during intercourse.
Imam Fawaz Junaid, leader of a mosque in The Hague, believes Muslims are under attack, victims of religious discrimination.
There are some who want to challenge the Muslims' beliefs and the Muslims' values, and here lies the problem.
Junaid even asked God to punish people like Van Gogh and Hirsi Ali, who he believes are attacking Islam.
What are people meant to think when you, an imam, says, for instance, "Oh God, blind Hirsi Ali like you have blinded her heart. Please bring cancer to her brain and to her tongue"? I mean, what are people meant to think when they hear somebody like you saying that?
We did say that prayer in a time when they were attacking Islam and lying about it. And we didn't have anyone who would carry our voice to the media. And Muslims in reality are like any nation that is under attack. They would be in a state of boiling anger.
Concerned about the imam's rhetoric, Dutch authorities are investigating whether a sermon he delivered before Van Gogh's murder violated Dutch laws on hate speech and discrimination. Moderate Muslims here say the Dutch backlash from the Van Gogh murder has put them all under siege.
There were mosques that were attacked. Islamic schools were burned. So the atmosphere was very, very tense.
Ahmad Marcouch is a Muslim member of Amsterdam's City Council. He says that most young Dutch Muslims aren't radical or violent, but worries that some could fall prey to extremist influences.
The problem is that we don't have an Islamic civil society that can help the young people to find their answers for their questions, religious questions. If we don't organize that, we're going to lose a big group in extremism.
Extremism like that of the Hofstad group. Emerson Vermaat, a Dutch investigative journalist, has spent years studying the group and the murder of Van Gogh.
There was a meeting in the Hofstad group in Amsterdam, and they said we must do something. We must maybe kill someone, but we must take action, we must revenge. Allah has been offended, the Quran has been offended.
They would sit together, they would watch videos with beheadings and read the Quran together and then plot jihadi activities.
It is a twisted version of Islam fueled by the culture clash here, but also by a steady stream of internet websites which offer radical Islam as the antidote to Western culture. This extremism has generated an extreme response from far-right politicians like Geert Wilders.
Can I just quote something to you, something that you said? That if Muhammad lived here today, I would propose tarring and feathering and hunting him out of the country as an extremist.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, this is what I said.
And you stand by it?
Of course.
You don't think it's extreme?
No, I
to
don't
say
think
the Quran should be torn up and Muhammad should be tarred and feathered?
No, if you look at the context and why I say it, I believe it's not extreme.
Geert Wilders' rhetoric has earned him death threats from Muslim extremists. Both he and Ayaan Hirsi Ali now live under 24-hour protection. From Amsterdam to Tehran to London,
we want to see the Sharia law in here in our country.
God's warriors are manning the front lines of a battle they believe they cannot afford to lose. And nowhere is this fight more significant than in the Holy Land.
The radical Palestinian group Islamic Jihad opened fire at random.
It was mass murder and terror on an Israeli street. For the gunmen, it was martyrdom.
The dearest thing to a human is his soul. So this is the ultimate sacrifice, to give your soul as a gift to God the Creator and the country.
A young man was dead. For most families, it would be a terrible loss, but not for this one. For this family, it was an honor.
I am proud. He went to God. I am not sad, and I'm not sorry.
Armed with automatic rifles, Youssef Swatat and another Palestinian opened fire at a busy intersection in the Israeli city of Hadera. They killed 4 people and wounded dozens more before police shot Youssef. Among his victims, a health clinic worker, a woman returning from the dentist, and 2 mothers of young children. I traveled to a Palestinian neighborhood in the West Bank city of Jenin to meet Youssef's family. Youssef left behind a note that spoke of martyrdom and heaven. He expected to die.
Do you think your son is going to heaven?
The Quran guides us and tells us this is so.
Martyrs don't have to wait for Judgment Day. They, bingo, go straight to their reward in paradise. This is all part of an Islamic belief system, very clearly spelled out.
Religious historian Bruce Lawrence says suicide martyrdom has become the last resort for those who feel powerless to fight any other way.
It's a message of despair, saying we haven't got any opportunity in this world, but we know because of our interpretation of Scripture, our reading of the Quran, that martyrs go to paradise. So join us and do this, and you're vouchsafed.
There is probably nothing more frightening and symbolic of Islamic extremism than the suicide attack. It is the weapon of choice for terrorists in Israel, Iraq, Indonesia, England, and the United States. While those who turn themselves into human bombs are a tiny minority, they leave millions terrified and bewildered about how someone can kill in the name of God.
The Quran says that suicide is haram, that you don't go to heaven if you kill yourself.
القرآن بيقول على هذا الشيء مش حرام.
The Quran tells us this is not forbidden.
لا مش حرام.
What our son did is not haram. Shouldn't it be forbidden for Israelis to kill our sons in front of our eyes?
Yusef's family says they had no idea he was preparing to die.
بحب يتجوز بحب يخلف.
He wanted to get married and to have kids.
عنده طموحات مثلا.
His ambitions were about having a house, a car of his own.
They remember him as a young boy, a budding artist and actor. The family showed me some of Yusef's work.
When he was younger, he used to like painting. He wanted to study fine art and to become both a painter and an actor.
But Yusef never fulfilled his childhood dreams and ended up in a low-paying job with the Palestinian police. In October of 2001, in retaliation for the assassination of an Israeli cabinet minister, Israeli troops went into the West Bank in force. This young Palestinian girl was badly wounded, and Yusef was the first to reach her.
He carried her to take her to the hospital, but she died in his arms before he got there. It was a horrible scene, and Yusef couldn't take it. He couldn't save her.
Did he start changing after that?
He stopped laughing and talking to us in the house. He was no longer how he used to be, joking, talking to everyone. He became silent and quiet. He started to pray all of the time, to fast, and spend most of his time in the mosque, even sleeping at the mosque, and always carrying the Quran and praying.
Yusef, distraught over the girl's death, was ripe for recruitment by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, a terrorist group that wants an Islamic state where Israel is today. They claim responsibility for numerous suicide attacks in Israel since the 1990s. Among them, killing 9 and injuring dozens at a restaurant, leaving 5 dead and many more wounded at a nightclub, and on a crowded bus, murdering 14 and injuring 50. Yusef's friends say Islamic Jihad supplied him with the weapons for his mission.
In all honesty, I never wanted my son to reach this point. When it came to my own son carrying out an attack, I was surprised and confused because my son is very dear to me.
But they seem to find great comfort in seeing their loss as a divine mission, their son's suicide as martyrdom, as portrayed in this Islamic Jihad poster.
Martyrdom is the highest level of sacrifice. We all wish to be martyrs, me, my mother, father, and all the Palestinian people.
As with many of their recruits, Islamic Jihad had Yusef tape a final message to his family.
My brothers and my mother, who is really precious to my heart, and all those whom I love, I send you all my regards and peace, and I ask you not to be upset, because this is martyrdom. And I ask you to pray for me and for all Muslims to achieve victory. Heaven is precious, your brother and your son.
Muslims, like people everywhere, abhor terrorism. The small minority who resorts to violence is symptomatic of something many of us have failed to understand. God's warriors, the emergence of millions of people around the world who view life through a religious prism and who fear that modern society is trampling their beliefs. With this report, we have tried to bridge the gap of understanding about the Muslim world. I'm Christiane Amanpour. Thank you for joining us.